Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of the Daily Crypto Byte. Today is Friday, July 23rd, and it's been a decent week in terms of crypto price action. 3 days in a row, some positive price action. And what's more important is we've been getting some very positive news-related events happening this week. Lots of news from institutions, and we'll cover all of that and more today. But before we get started, how are you guys doing today, CJ and John?
Fabulous. And we got lots to talk about today, guys. Not all of it crypto, but some of it could be pretty interesting over the next little bit. If you don't mind, I'd love to throw one out at the top, Monty.
Go for it.
Okay. So I am not a lawyer. I'm saying that up front. But my wife was a lawyer at a big law firm, partner there. She was a judge for 20 years and since retired. Now she is a mediator. The reason I throw all that out there is sort of like I'm not really a doctor either, Monty. But I was around my dad, who was a transplant surgeon, and my mom, who was a nurse. So you kind of pick things up from some of these people. Obviously, that doesn't mean you want me doing your brain operation or me being your lawyer. But with that said, the NFL, in their woke idiocy, is out there and has said, if a non-vaccinated player gets somebody else sick during a game, and again, that's going to be really tough to determine that and I'm a vaccinated person, folks. But if a player elected not to get vaccinated and somebody on the team gets sick, his team, the other team, freaking popcorn boy, I don't know what, somebody gets sick and they can trace it back to that unvaccinated player or at least blame him, then that team forfeits the game and neither team gets paid. Now, that is wrong on so many levels, guys. And we don't have time today to get into all the levels, but just briefly, because I listened to the CEO of American and United and JetBlue when they were asked this question on various networks, including CNBC, can you mandate that your pilots, that your gate attendants, that your flight attendants have to get vaccinated? And they said, no, it's against the law because it's an experimental drug still. It's for emergency use authorization, technically. So that means the FDA hasn't said that it's safe yet. They said it's safe enough for emergency use. So again, I'm not an anti-vaxxer, folks. I'm vaxxed. Both my daughters are vaxxed. My wife is vaxxed. But I'm saying I don't think the NFL can tell these players that that they could have such a draconian measure as to forfeit the game. And number two, if they don't pay either team for that game, you guys know, because we talk about it a lot, it's not uncommon for a player these days to make $1 million per game. So in other words, not every player on the field makes that. But let's say that there's $50 million on one side of the field and $50 million on the other that are getting paid in total. Are you telling me that the ownership of either team does not have to pay those players, and yet all the fans paid to go in and see that game, all the TV contract money, everything else, all the ancillary sales that went into that, the players don't get to get what their contract specifies that they get for performing? I tell you what, I think class action attorneys will be lined up for this thing, because I don't want to say it's slavery, but you're making somebody work without paying them. You could put a word to it, but it is certainly not something that should be going on in America in 2021.
Yeah, that is, I'm in agreement with you there, John. Interesting stuff. Good. Glad you're passionate about that. Good passion to start the show. Well, let's get into some crypto related news, because CJ, I know you had a pretty big piece regarding, some wealthy family office traders that may now have an avenue into crypto. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. we get this question so many times where, are we in the beginning of a bear market, or is this just a pullback in a prolonged bull market? And I think that if we look at fundamentals, and this is another instance of where we get that example, and it is the fact that nearly half of Goldman Sachs's ultra rich clients sought crypto in their portfolios. According to a Bloomberg report here, 45% of the ultra rich clients sought exposure to the asset class, meaning crypto, as a means to hedge against higher inflation, prolonged low rates, and other macroeconomic developments after a year of unprecedented global and monetary fiscal stimulus. So that's very interesting. Clearly, when individuals say, oh, there's such a lack of institutional demand, I don't buy it. This field is still getting greater adoption each day, and there's serious demand from the institutional players. And I think that this report from Goldman and Bloomberg really highlights that.
Yeah, absolutely, CJ. And one thing, that we have been talking about a lot over the last few weeks is that sort of infrastructure being laid for, more institutional or heavy-handed on-ramps. And we talked last week about people claiming that there isn't that institutional demand. That's only true in the sense that the capital isn't yet flowing in. But in terms of, building the on-ramps, we have companies like, BNY Mellon partnering with Grayscale to bring an institutional ETF to the market. We have, this news that you just talked about. And then also JP Morgan. I was watching Rob from Digital Asset News. He did a great job covering some news coming out of JP Morgan yesterday and how they're going to open up crypto trading to all of their family office clients as well. So, we're seeing a shift in, not just perception, but also vehicles for like on-ramps to crypto. So the capital isn't flowing in yet, but that's because it has to be preceded by these sort of, pipes being laid for the institutional money to come in. We saw the same thing last October. And, this was followed by a huge spike in open interest on the CME. We're starting to see a turn up in open interest on the CME as well right now. So I'll be watching that closely because I think that is a tremendous gauge of institutional interest in the crypto space.
Yeah, I agree. We talked about it briefly yesterday about that, exactly what CJ is talking about. You're going to see virtually everybody moving into this space. That doesn't mean necessarily that crypto has to go higher, but I'm a big believer in supply and demand, as the viewers and as CJ and Monty know. And if you have more demand and a lessening amount of supply, we've talked about the halvening that happened last May and so forth for Bitcoin. I don't know how somebody puts that into a mix and says that crypto, in particular, a limited amount of crypto like Bitcoin, doesn't go considerably higher. But that's what makes a market, guys. If everybody knew it was going to be $1 million, you couldn't buy it right now at 32,800.
Well, that's definitely the narrative that's been kind of a hedge against inflation. And that's one of the primary reasons we saw a lot of institutions embracing Bitcoin initially back when we had first climbed above 20K and into the 30Ks. But I do want to share kind of one technical piece as well after discussing the fundamentals. But Monty, is there anything you'd like to bring forth kind of before we do that?
No, the only thing I was going to mention was just, building off of what we were just talking about in terms of, institutional interest in the space. And like I said, this is something that we have seen before. Okay. So, we were talking about this in the chat yesterday. One of our members, Michael Lindell, I think did a great job of kind of explaining why we're returning to levels that we haven't seen since the beginning of the year. I talked about, laying that institutional infrastructure for those, for the on-ramps of that capital. That's exactly what we were seeing back here when Bitcoin was below 20K, moving modestly to the upside. We're actually mostly seeing it here in October when we were somewhat flat. But this is like very comparable to what we're seeing now. We're seeing these, family office funds beginning to allow their clients to trade crypto. And, CJ has a course in our education curriculum about momentum and money flow and volume. And I think you should really take a look at that, because looking at that course in context with the institutional interest we've been seeing in the space, I think really paints a clear picture that, during this time, we were seeing new money flow into the space that was bolstered by institutional capital that, was being put in for the long haul. Once we hit this critical point right here, we saw a ton of retail capital enter the space that's much less heavy-handed. They capitulated, and now we're coming back down to the original point where the institutions kind of either started exiting to take profits, or this is just kind of an area where they started entering the market in the first place in general. So I think we're entering a place where we're going to see more heavy-handed buyers stepping in. Nothing really has changed in terms of technical price action. We're still below this 20 smooth moving average, and until that changes, I still think we're trending down. But we are approaching a bottom in the sense that we're approaching the place that we were at back at the beginning of the year, where the institutions really started to drive this market. But go ahead.
I'm glad you brought up momentum as well, because I do want to make a point specifically on momentum with moving average, convergence, divergence, otherwise known as the MACD. So just bring that up. So I talked earlier about kind of the differences in what we've seen in technicals between a bear market and a bull market. And so what I want to highlight today is on the MACD, when we have these large divergences from kind of the midpoint on the histogram, and when we have momentum either coming down or coming up, and how that plays on price. So obviously we had a very similar kind of structure to the MACD as we do now back in the start of the bear market of 2018. However, like I said, I think there's money still coming into the space. Fundamentally, I'm not buying the bear market narrative necessarily from a fundamental perspective, but it definitely has parallels in terms of the technical perspective. Nonetheless, look what we had, kind of a massive divergence from that midpoint here after COVID, and when we actually had a nice bullish cross coming back towards the midpoint. Typically, when we get momentum that swings back from a level like this, it's going to go towards the midpoint, if not go even further, a little bit more bullish. So on the daily chart with the MACD in that sense, I think it's pretty safe to say that bearish momentum is definitely declining. And that's why I'm comfortable kind of beginning to accumulate and scale in at these levels. But with that being said, is that a good segue to the Doge of the day for today, gentlemen?
Yeah, I think so, CJ. I think so. I'm glad to hear you're a bit more optimistic. And yesterday, we looked at some assets that actually did have some positive price action coming in today. So I'm sure people will be eager for a follow-up on that. But you want to start us off, CJ? Mr. McCree, the VGX hero, as Michael points out. I know you newly minted VGX hero.
Yeah, I was really honored to be invited to that group. It's really fun. You pick a VGX or you pick a hero, and then that's kind of your avatar for this very exclusive VGX Heroes Club. But yeah, I was happy to be able to join that one. They want you too, Monty. You're next.
I know. I've been thinking about who to make my hero. I like your pick, McCree. That's a good one. I'm brainstorming. I'll probably do it today or over the weekend. I'll join.
All right. I'm sticking with Leo, guys. We talked about it yesterday. Leo, it made it up from the 150s to LEO. Take a look at my, 174. So it's up a little over 6.5% in the last 24 hours. I like it to still press back towards that $3 level in the very near term. So look for it. I mean, some resistance perhaps at 281 or so, and then for us to bust through and get into the $3 level. And at $280 to $3, I think I'll be taking some off in Leo.
Very nice, very nice. CJ, what you got for us today?
T-Fuel.
Oh.
So I'll show you what I like about this one. Just go to add sequential. But as you can see here, Very similar characteristic of what we like to talk about here. Large divergence from the moving average and then finally starting to turn up. I think we're going to go back to the moving average here at about 35 cents. Also starting a very nice bullish crossover on the MACD, kind of how I had mentioned in Bitcoin earlier. But for those reasons, Theta Fuel, ticker symbol T Fuel, is going to be my Doge of the day.
Very nice. My Doge of the day today is going to be Cardano, and I'm picking it along a similar hypothesis as we picked our Doges yesterday, CJ. And I just like what I'm seeing in terms of technicals, and also in terms of the fact that it just seems like it's a bit behind the rest of the market in terms of the positive price action that we've been seeing over the last couple of days. So like many other assets, we got this TD by 9 here. It continued to fall off. We saw this in a few other assets as well. Like we pointed out yesterday, one of them was Uni. We saw a very similar technical formation happen in Uni. It was just 2 days prior to this Cardano price action. We have the bullish engulfing candle at the bottom of the downtrend here, and we have a strong negative divergence from this smooth moving average. We saw basically what we saw yesterday was a lot of assets like Uni. What was your Doge of the day yesterday, CJ?
Uni and Matic.
And Matic, yeah. So we saw a bunch of assets with negative divergences and, just a general kind of divergence from the rest of the market. We saw them find parity with their moving average and the rest of the market as well, with some relatively positive price action in a market that isn't showing too much positive price action. So I'm looking at Cardano today. I like the chances for this thing to come up and retest the smooth moving average. If it does do that, I would likely exit that long trade. But still, that's a pretty significant move from 1.16 to about 1.3. And I think that that's something that could happen today. Kind of a similar play to what we saw yesterday with both Matic and Uni. So that is my Doge of the day today, Cardano.
Bang. Well, folks, keep in mind that you can always join Matt, CJ, and thousands of other traders in the crypto room over at Market Rebellion. If you've not been in there, it'll cost you $1 for a full month of access. Your first month is just $1. You can go to marketrebellion.com/try crypto to do that. And if you are new to crypto, or if you're not happy with your broker for crypto, check out Voyager. They sponsor this program. We are investors in Voyager. We're going to be launching stock options and futures along with Voyager. And Voyager doesn't charge commission. They also pay among the highest rate on the street for deposited crypto. Some of those rates are pushing very close to 10% right now. And if you type in Rebel25, you get $25 in Bitcoin just for signing up.
There you have it, folks. That's all we got for today. Thank you so much for joining us as always, and have a wonderful weekend. We'll be hanging out in the room, like John said. We're in there 24/7. So if you're looking to trade this weekend, you want someone to chat with, come in the room, drop by, tell us what you're trading, and we'll be happy to provide some insight. So thank you guys so much for watching. Have a great weekend. We'll see you again on Monday. Take care.